question that you ask is like, what is human level intelligence, right? Like, and for that, there is a very famous example. So I don't know if you have seen this movie called The Imagination Game, which is on the life of Alan Turing. It is an open source mission. It's a mission to advance the state of the art in artificial intelligence for law and justice, right? Like the initiative is structured is that every organization is coming, advancing their own AI. Rashika and Smita sort of leading is Makeathon. It's an 8-week online challenge where we are inviting applicants both from law background and engineering background to create hybrid teams who will work on on AI justice solutions. So they're launching the Lawyer Learns AI for Justice move, which again should give you a very good grip on understanding all the parts of the value. And that I was talking to my colleague about is like, what a great time to be alive. Right, like, and that's really the feeling, and I know, like, some people might call me out like that I'm speaking out of context because there's already a lot of stuff that's happening in the world, but yeah, while that is also true, this is also true, like what community collaborators and people across the sectors are doing. This is beautiful, right? Like, right. And that sort of a collaboration, openness, cutting across institutes, cutting across areas of expertise and experience, and just having the will to figure out how do you advance AI for justice is very exciting. And that's why, like, what a great time to be alive. I think that's the feeling that I have, and what I would want everyone to be with, because there are a lot of exciting work that everyone in the ecosystem is doing.
So you also did like a comic book or a series of comic books. I'm a little
So I was basically working with the CBSE, and one of the things that we wanted to do there was put some content on critical thinking. Mm-hmm. And basically we built this comic book in collaboration with like CBSE. It is a comic book where we have two characters, Ankit and Ankita. They are having a conversation, and in this conversation they are basically trying to figure out what does knowing really mean, right? Like, if you know something, right, if something is true or not, right, like how do you sort of like come to those conclusions and things like that. And you take like a both analytical approach as well as like very puzzle approach. How does it look like in case of like when you're thinking about mathematical problems or non-mathematical problems. Now this seems like a very high level, but everything here is like at grade 10 level, and we explore it by like examples, a lot of examples. So it's also a lot of like curated content from a lot of people, so that's why like we believe like that this is very interesting for children. So yeah, that was the comic book.
Got it. And then you worked on a project called SciPy, which is an open source Python library. So what was the idea behind it, and what really does the open source library do?
Yeah, so basically so I've been working, doing a lot of like data analysis in Python for like some time now. And when you do it like for long enough, you inevitably feel like that you need to automate some part of your work, right? Like, so that's how it started with, like, there are certain things that I would like just do more often, like the kind of inquiries that I would have on a data set like more often. So I should basically try to automate it for myself. That was the idea. But then I basically saw like name matching, for example, is a very complicated problem in most of the like data spaces, because say there is a register of all the schools in a district, and then there is a register of all the schools in say other database, right? But the names are not matching because someone must have written an NM Vidyanagar, or someone's Vidya is VIDHIYA or something of that sort, right? Like, so this name matching becomes a problem. So I basically try to automate that using something called TF-IDF, which is one of the machine learning techniques, like very loosely, just a pattern matching technique, to be very honest. But yeah, so I basically automated that part. Then I was also like writing a lot of scraper to get a lot of data. So basically there's a Delhi High Court website to get a lot of like judgment data. So I basically try to create a utility which is which basically goes and fetches that data for you. So all that you have to enter is like just some configuration of like from which date to which date and what sections and blah blah, and then it will basically fetch all of that data, store it onto your computer. So just making those utilities. which I thought like would be very useful for like a lot of people who are in similar spaces. I haven't checked like how many people have downloaded it also, to be very honest. But yeah, that's just like something where like I contribute sometime whenever I have some time, but it's a more like part-time project than anything else.
Got it. And so just now we'll just move into the OpenNyai as project and your work at Agami, right? So just quickly, how did you find out about Agami? Like, is it something that's
Yeah.
very popular in social spaces? Because I'm very distant from that side of things.
No, so I did not know. So basically, like when you're close to policy, you are also closer to law in some sense,
No.
right? Like in education context, one thing that I have like always heard is like right to education, right? And there, like if you talk about like the private schools area, then you also know about Article 12(1)(c),
Yeah.
right? Like so, this is all that I knew about law because like I was largely looking at it from the data perspective, and then when I got a chance to like do the policy role, that's how I was there. And parallelly I was also looking at like how the artificial intelligence, so we as an we as humanity did really well in terms of images, right? Like our artificial intelligence for like identifying faces of people or different objects, that has improved like really faster compared to how the natural language is
Got
sort
it.
of processed, right? Like so speech processing is like
It's
has
tougher.
like slower journey, text processing has had a slower journey and things like that, till you started hearing about like these large language models, right? GPT-3 and blah blah, all that stuff. And I was in my head just thinking about it, right? Like which other profession has like text as its bread and butter, right? Like so it's largely law, right? Like everything is written, everything is
Yeah.
recorded in that sense. It's fairly complicated, like human process to see,
Right.
right? Like, but I'm pretty sure like there are like a lot of interesting AI problems. So that was my thesis too. And then I was like, कि अगर law नहीं आएगा again education की तरह, so I won't be able to do something in this
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
right? So I was looking at like getting an admission BLLB. But at the same time, like a friend who basically knew about Agami told me that there is something like this that exists, and then things happened, and then I landed up in Agami, and then I learned for the first time that you don't really need some of these things. Like we unnecessarily and artificially put that baggage on
Barrier.
ourselves, that like me, I have to be like a really smart, really effective, and person who basically knows everything, right? Like about this space, right? To basically get into that. But it was not that. It was just like genuine curiosity to basically see what AI could really do in this space. And just because like I was very curious. Also, at that time, my flatmate was basically a fresh graduate from NLU Kochi.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah. So he had a very big role to play in that thing, because then I met his friends who basically some of them went to litigation, some of them basically went to law firms. And then I used to speak to those guys whenever they were home, and then their juniors would come and practice for moot courts in my
Oh, okay.
in my room. So that's how I basically got to know his entire circle. And I was like, yeah, this is very achievable. I think just if you know people who are doing that kind of thing,
Yeah.
if you know them like for one time you experience them, I think the fear of like the field goes away. Then you realize, oh, I just have to like this is what like mota moti things are, right? Like so, I think that basically helped. And then Agami, I figured out that there was an opportunity. Data for Justice was the
Yeah.
work that I was doing, and then later on we started this not started basically realized this mission called OpenNyai, which is again like something that I was looking at for like a very long time, even before I came to Agami in that sense. But like that's where we basically realized that a lot of people can actually come together, and that's more effective way of developing something which is as critical as like AI for law and justice.
Got it.
So that's how I transitioned from CSF to Agami.
Okay, some fundamental questions before we sort of jump into OpenNyai. And OpenNyai is written in a very interesting way, by the way. It's OpenNyai and AI.
Yeah.
So, first, right, what is AI? Can you explain it to somebody who was like a 5-year-old or maybe like a first or a second grader, right? Is that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, artificial intelligence is basically anything that any machine emitting or mimicking like some sort of an intelligence that's how we. So fundamental in artificial intelligence is to first understand what intelligence really is. So right, like you can if you respond to light in a certain way, or like whenever you interact with your environment, just generally, right, like there is a certain sense of intelligence that you perform, right? Like, so if there is like fire, you will not put your hand there, or like if there is a game of chess, then you know like what moves to play, or like if you hear like 3-4 people speaking in another room, then you are able to say, okay, which person is speaking. So you're basically acting intelligently. Now very small form of technologically intelligent or like artificially intelligent would be things that you would have experienced, like automatic turning on and off lights, right? Like when you enter a particular bathroom or something, like light suddenly turns on and things like that. Another intelligent system would be, say, like a smoke detector, right? Like if there's a smoke, then it reacts to it, and then basically does it. So there is a angle of observation there, right? Like so it is able to observe, and then basis certain things, like certain intelligence, that's what it's mimicking, it's giving you a response. So from observation and response, like you will be able to make like whether this is intelligent or not. That the other question that you ask is like, what is human level intelligence, right? Like and for that there is a very famous example. So I don't know if you have seen this game called movie called the Imagination Game, which is on the life of Alan Turing. He basically is he was a British mathematician and cryptographer who basically came up with something called Turing test. I'm like, he did not come up with the name Turing test, but I think we started calling it Turing test. But the game was very simple, that Shreya, Saurabh, and someone else, right? We three are playing a game where we have a chat window. Shreya is Shreya, Saurabh is Saurabh.
Is this the imitation game?
This is the imitation game.
Yeah. Famous movie.
Yeah, so imitation game. So basically what he basically did is that if you are in a conversation not able to distinguish between who is machine and who is human being, right? So if Shreya is playing this game and there is Saurabh and there is like another computer, if she is continuously like asking questions in Saurabh and that machine both responds, can she tell like which one is Saurabh, which one is machine, right? Like and when you're not able to do that, that's when you say like machine is at a human level intelligence. So intelligence also has like its gradation, right? Like very simple intelligence to like very highly sophisticated intelligence in that sense. So this is intelligence when they are artificially produced. We are biologically intelligent, right? Like our intelligence comes from biology, but like when you artificially create it, then you basically say it's artificial intelligence.
Got it. Also, like Blade Runner, right? I think they have some like test in that movie, which is similar when they're trying to distinguish between a cyborg and like a human.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have seen this like product launch for Google Duplex, which is So Lambda, another language model which has been like making a lot of news lately, whether it has gotten sentient or not. That is the first demonstration that Google did with respect to an automated.
Is this why the engineer was chucked out?
So that's the sentient part, but like the same language model was used in Google Duplex, which basically could do restaurant reservations for you. Like, so it will talk to someone in the restaurant.
Oh wow!
And, do the reservation. So kind of conversations that you would have here is like, she'll say, "Oh, Thursday evening is not possible, ma'am. Can we do like Friday morning?" And they would be like, okay, for how many people? Then you would say like 5 people, and you would say, oh, Friday morning is not possible. Can we do like Friday afternoon? And it's basically able to make sense of all of that and able to get you the reservation. Okay. Right. So now here the receptionist or the person who is basically taking the call is not able to say whether this person who is speaking to her or not, is a human being or a machine. Right. So that's how you would say like whether it has passed Turing test or not. However, like one could challenge that, say that like if you really carefully listen to it, then you will be able to make it like that it's a machine, it's not a human being. Like if you just have more conversation with that. But that's the edge that everyone is trying to push for. Like how many people.
You know what this is strangely reminding me of is all the calls I got during the political campaigns, and I'm just wondering if they can use this and leverage this. It's gonna really be a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, again, right? Like it's technology has to be handled very responsibly, right? Like when we had electricity, and we don't complain about like having electricity anymore, right? Like, but at some point of time, it was dangerous. Like, in fact, like, it was also, whether you will have alternate current or direct current, right? Like, there was a lot of like stuff there where, a lot of stuff happened, like more fundamentally there also, right? Like how you use electricity. Same happened with like other technology forms that came up, right? Like, be it like rocket, because through rockets now you are able to like put satellites in the space, and you're able to have a conversation, but the same satellites, same rockets can have like warheads and things like that. So you're fundamentally trying to solve for like transport, information, some of these areas, but how you use it is like very, very dependent on. That's why it has to be done responsibly. And one of the ways to do it is like to be very open with that, right? Like, so that people are able to tell you like, how it needs to be shaped, how it will be fruitful. So yeah, that's the sort of a take.
Got it. Okay, so now just walk us through OpenNyai and how, and what are the kind of main initiatives that it's looking at.
Yeah, so OpenNyai is an open source mission. It's a mission to advance the state of the art in artificial intelligence for law and justice, right? Like, so that's what we are really focused on. The way the initiative is structured is that every organization is coming, advancing their own AI work, right? Okay. Like, so there are areas of interest. So while the mission is to advance the field, everyone is basically doing other, different things. That's because someone might be, deep into, say, judgment prediction problems and explanation problems. Someone might be doing more like fundamental text analytics sort of a use case. Someone might be building information systems and things like that. Someone might be critiquing and ensuring that that the judgments are written for a lot of people, right? Like by the way of translation, or like contextualizing it to a particular gender and things like that, right? Like, so a lot of people are looking at a lot of facets of these problems. So yeah, so everyone is basically working on their own problems. We meet quite often. We have learning circle where we come and like we share whatever our learnings are and things like that. Then we also focus on so apart, there are some things where like we are collaborating with the ecosystem and building it, and there are some things where we have a much deeper collaboration, right? Like where multiple organizations have come together to start building certain critical public goods that you would need to advance the field, right? Like, and that would be, say, like a data set or like a baseline model, AI model, right? Like, which can be used by everyone else. So with respect to machine learning or artificial intelligence, the main thing that you really need, the fuel for all of this, is basically data, right? Like, once you have been able to collect, like, say, a good sizable chunk of like data, then you will be able to make a model. And what it basically helps you do is like, then other people who are trying to solve for the same problem in a slightly different way can use this, because for you to go and collect all of that data again, it's going to be like very, very difficult. So someone has to basically plow the field for the for the crops to emerge. So that's the sort of work that we're doing. So we recently, not recently, actually, on 31st of December, because we thought like that would be a really cool day to release the first model. We released something called rhetorical role predictor. So whenever you have a judgment, right, like a judgment basically has like multiple parts. It can have facts, precedents, your analysis, decision, court decision, and things like that, right? Like there are several parts to it, right? When a lawyer reads a judgment, it basically implicitly knows, okay, this is where the fact is spoken about, okay, this is where the arguments are, and things like that, right? But if you have this being mimicked by a AI, right, like by a computer, you will have to basically get all of this data where you have a judgment text and you're marking what is what, right? That's the only way for you to get the data of the structure of the judgment. And then an AI can also read and tell you which one is fact, which one is analysis, which one is precedent, or not, right? Like, this in itself can be used in multiple forms. So one of the reference solutions that we have released is actually a judgment explorer. So when you pass it through an AI, what it will help you do is it will help you glance through the judgment really, really fast. So if you want to just focus on what are the facts, what are the decision, right? Like, you can very clearly see because those parts are highlighted. If you're looking to see like what were the sections that was applicable in this particular judgment, then you can go to named entity recognition tab and you will be able to see the entire judgment and what were the applied sections or provisions, or what were the name of the party. Sometimes you just want to see the name of the party and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So through NER components, like this is just a reference solution, but then you can use this to do a lot of like other important tasks. For example, code judgment, explanation predictor. So for a lot of like if you look at other countries, a lot of very small issues in higher volume, which usually does not get appealed. So the chances of like a court giving decision, because they are like fairly simple sort of a cases to do this, right? Like in these particular scenarios, you can explore something called like the judgment prediction and explanation, where AI will, for these very simplistic models, suggest what should it be, what should be the judgment in this particular case, and then a human can review it. So it can basically look at all of the information and then, for each case, help you like explore that judgment much better and tell you like, what it could be. So it's more like a writing assistant and that kind of a, feel to it. But yeah, for you to think about like getting like 600, 700 judgments and to get, so we have like 350 judgments plus 150 judgments, so around like 600, 700 judgments annotated like this across this country, right? Like and for us to make that, like there's almost like 1500, 1600 judgments which were annotated by students all across the country. So we have had like 25 plus colleges from across the country, and ranging from like there are almost all the nooks and corners from where like the students have come and they have contributed their time, because we take them through this entire learning journey of like understanding what the artificial intelligence is, what the natural language processing is, then how do you create the data for artificial intelligence is one of the critical things that we do there. So we are also working with Lawyers Learn, Bhavin and his team to basically create this like a course where this will be part of the entire flow, where one can come learn about artificial intelligence, understand how to read judgments, work on one of the projects to prepare the data set, and experience firsthand. Because slowly and steadily, as the technology becomes much better, it will be more about like identifying the use cases where you can apply artificial intelligence technology and how you will gather the data for that, right? Like, so that's the sort of experience. And in return, like the open, because we basically create the larger corpus of data for some of these problems, and all the work that we do under OpenNyai is basically your CC BY 4.0 and MIT license. So it's basically available for anyone to use for any reason in that sense, right? Like if you want to sort of, if you're a not-for-profit, you want to use this data and apply it on your judgment to understand them better, you could do that. If you're a for-profit organization who is basically looking to build some intelligent judgment applications, you can use it, and you don't have to like take up the cost and the effort and the accuracy and the technical expertise that is required to arrive at this model. So we're basically laying the bricks, those foundational bricks, through these work. So that's what we do in OpenNyai. There are multiple IITs that we are working very closely with. There are multiple national law universities. There are individuals, organizations from law, technology, policy, design, art, who are working very closely in just basically helping build a community which is like making the AI happen responsibly in India, because I think like there's immense value that we can bring to law and justice ecosystem, and we can solve a lot of, not even solve, like we can assist human beings in like developing capacities which were not present earlier. So now you can think about solving a particular problem in a fundamentally different way with these things. So we are just bringing that lens by building this community of like responsible AI, makers for law and justice in that sense.
There's something called Makeathon also, which was recently released, right? Which is like a competition. Yeah. So what is that?
My colleague Rashika and Smita would have loved to like sort of talk about it. But Makeathon is an 8-week online program, right? Like, so now basis our experience, what we learned is that for some of these technologies to come up, right, the lawyers and technologists both have to work with each other. And I think like one strange realization was that, lawyers are afraid of engineers and engineers are afraid of lawyers equally, right? Like, because no one understands each other's
Everybody I speak to who's a non-lawyer are just like, we're afraid of the law, we're afraid of lawyers, we do not want to put our face in that, which I do know.
Yeah, because I think the circles are disparate in that sense, and then like you have to sort of like create opportunities where they can actually work together. Because if you're able to give them a vocabulary to have a conversation,
right?
If you can allow them to explore ideas together, that's where innovation will come from, right? Like, so you'll have to like sort of create those opportunities. So one of the things that like my colleagues Rashika and Smita are sort of leading is Makeathon. It's a 8-week online challenge where we are inviting applicants both from law background and engineering background to create hybrid teams who will work on on AI justice solutions. So there are a lot of there are a lot of problems around the justice system that people can identify. There are a lot of data sets, tools, and AI models that's available out there in the ecosystem. There are use cases that people have spoken and is available. And our hope is like if we create this opportunity, if we are able to curate this much better, right? Like have the have people sort of like do this thing. I think a lot of innovation can come out. I think a lot of like useful stuff would come out of this. So this is actually the second Makeathon that we are doing. So Makeathon is happening in collaboration with OpenNyai. The first Makeathon that happened was with Ajivika Bureau, where we were exploring like how do you solve like problems of the migrants in that sense. So Makeathon is basically an idea that basically talks about how do you get to making something like how do you incentivize making of things in the ecosystem in that sense. So that's what Makeathon is, and this time we are doing Makeathon for OpenNyai. We are basically building hybrid teams for AI justice solutions.
Got it. I just have one like last question because we've been speaking for quite a bit, which is that okay? Like I hear you. I understand AI is gonna have like massive implications on how the legal profession works and the entire ecosystem. But where do I really start, right? As somebody who's not really studied it, doesn't really understand the basics of it. Do you have any? And I know you mentioned, right, like you can learn everything about AI on YouTube, but where do you really start, and do you have any recommendations in that sense? Of course there is your course that's going to come out, but apart from that, something to supplement all of that learning.
Yeah, I think that's why volunteering is, I think I recommend volunteering whenever you want to learn something, right? Like so for me, DataKind was that experience, like where volunteering, really helped me understand. So it's like once you're able to like sort of figure out people who are doing the kind of work that you would want to do, then you start like sort of exploring it together, right? Like, and we are very happy to like have those conversations. So if you are someone who is wanting to sort of explore it, like we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Once you have a sense of like what you want to do, so they are like both like tacit understanding of things that you would need, which you acquire by like talking to people, and then they're like more technical professional sort of skills that you require. And for that, a lot of like courses you can take. You can take like, and it's very advisable that you first take like some of the fundamental courses, especially in AI. Even if you are afraid of mathematics, the mathematics is fairly limited, right? Like, and that's the good thing. And the other thing is like most of the AI now happens through programming, and programming is very similar to like how you do contract drafting. You have to look at things very carefully. You have to understand what the rules are, and you just have to like write the logic correctly. The good thing is in contract, you only get to know there is an error when it reaches
much later.
Yeah. Here your compilers and your interpreters will tell you the problem like right up front. So like the iteration to build a good logic is like much better and faster because of the programming support that you have.
And also like a transferable skill to build, right? Like this is going to be directly transferable to building everything.
Absolutely. I think just like how writing is something that all the professions now have to do, right? Like even if you're a software developer, then you are probably writing user stories, right? Like if you're a lawyer, then you're probably writing for your life, right? If you're an engineer, you're probably writing like technical documents. So a lot of communication as well, right? So a lot of writing is the core skill, but it was not always like that, right? Like we also like adopted writing as a skill in our professional like toolkit, because profession is like you have to basically solve this particular problem or do something, right? Like that defined thing. But the skills that you need to do that job and do it like better or more professionally, right? Like you would need to sort of upgrade your toolkit. So how we included writing, I think like programming is the next thing that you have to do. And you have to do not because like, this is what your job is going to demand, but like you can do like really, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
You can, and if you have incepted like creating a website or like creating a mobile phone game and things like that, you should definitely like get into that. In fact, there are like a lot of now people are going a level deeper, where they are saying like no code, right? Like you can do a lot of like no code building. But the idea is like you can make something. And with software, that's the thing, right? Like if you have like enough knowledge, then you can sort of like build something which like really works on a computer, and you can share it with your friends. So that's an incentive. But yeah, so like find out people who are working in similar space, talk to them, ask them questions. Usually people are like very kind. In my journey, what I have found is like just writing emails itself, like, and if you have like a very well defined sort of a question to ask, then people do respond. So people are generous and kind enough to respond to your mails. And for learning, like there are enough content available out there. In addition to which, we are launching the Lawyer Learns AI for Justice MOOC, which again should give you a very good grip on understanding all the parts of the value chain. And once you are able to sort of do that, then you can, go through your alleys. And one of the first things, and probably the more important thing that we will teach in the duration of the course, is how do you build the data set in the first go. And once you sort of understand that, then everything else basically gets demystified for you.
And in terms of volunteering, right? If I really want to volunteer more with closer to people who are working with data sets or are data scientists, do you have any recommendations in terms of organizations working in this space?
Yeah, so see, like there are a lot of people across the country who are working on legal AI problems, right? Like IIT Kharagpur, IIT Kanpur, Triple IIT Delhi, IIT Madras, IIT Bombay.
The
right?
engineers are at it.
Because we think of it from an automation space, right? And that's what we are trying to sort of like break, because you also have to sort of like, so the conversation cannot be let's make some, legal AI and that the AI is really, really bad. Right. Like that's almost like the two kind of conversation that's going on, right? Like the conversation that we really are excited about is like, how do you make the responsible AI happen? Right. Like, and you can't answer that question either by, like you have to have that sort of like, synergy to do. And it's great to see like, and the thing is like, when I said like IITs of the world, like there are other engineering colleges where AI is now becoming like a BTech course and things like that. And all of these like work because you have to engage. There's like a very deep collaboration happening within the ecosystem with lawyers. So say like a professor from NUJS would be working with a professor from an IIT. We are very deeply associated with National Law University, Bangalore, Odisha, and things like that, right? Like so we are basically like what we are seeing is heavy level of collaboration already happening. I think just expressing your intent and keeping an eye on some of the LinkedIn posts, like we curate a lot of those opportunities on OpenNyai. Whenever I personally see a opportunity, for example, IIT Madras AI for Bharat folks are doing some like really fantastic AI work, right? And they would, a lot of people like would need like, people who can translate, annotate, and things like that. I think those are the greatest opportunities to sort of like tap on, because that's where a lot of conversations can start happening. Right. Data is much easier to understand. Like when you're building the data set, then it's much easier to understand the context of the problem and everything. And then from there you can go to what is the AI architecture, how would the neural network, how do you sort of like train the model and things like that. But for you to understand the problem and value chain, this is one way to sort of start.
Correct. I think that's great advice. We'll obviously also put your LinkedIn profile in the description so people can follow you and follow all the updates you've been curating. So that's all the questions I had for you, Saurabh. Is there any like parting thoughts you have, anything you'd like to say before we sort of close for the day?
No, I think I mean, one expression that I was talking to my colleague about is like, what a great time to be alive. Right, like, and that's really the feeling. And I know like some people might call me out like that I'm speaking out of context, because there's already a lot of stuff that's happening in the world. But yeah, while that is also true, this is also true, like what community collaborators and people across the sectors are doing. This is beautiful, right? Like, right. And that sort of a collaboration, openness, cutting across institutes, cutting across like areas of expertise and experience, and just having the will to figure out how do you advance AI for justice is very exciting. And that's why, like, what a great time to alive. I think, that's the feeling that I have, and would I would want everyone to be with, because there are a lot of exciting work that everyone in the ecosystem is doing. It's very exciting times in that sense. Yeah.
I think that's a great note to sort of end this on. So yeah, I hope more and more people sort of really put their face into AI, and like you said, right, it's just going to be one of those things that eventually adds to your professional toolkit. So I really and good luck for like the course and the Makeathon and everything else. And I hope OpenNyai continues to do some brilliant things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And people, join the Makeathon. It's gonna be really, really cool. And I really hope that you guys will have a lot of good time meeting it. So that's just the last thing.
Thank you so much once again. Yeah, thank you so much for taking out the time to do this with us today, Saurabh. And